Going Down Fighting by Layla Moon. Read by Ella Mabella. Chapter 7. Welcome to 8th year at Hogwarts. Hermione's eyes fluttered open as she slowly took in her surroundings. It had been 3 months since the Battle of Hogwarts, and only recently had she stopped waking up in cold sweat, heart pounding. Now she could even escape the nightmares as long as she didn't sleep alone. Most nights, Hermione would find herself padding silently to Harry's room, and he would automatically curl himself around her. She knew it was putting a strain on his and Ginny's newly blossoming relationship, but she didn't know how else to cope. It was difficult going to Ron. She knew he still harbored feelings towards her, and she didn't want to confuse things further. The three of them, along with Ginny, visiting during the day, had been living together at Grimmauld Place all summer, and had finally started to feel like a home. Hermione found that the physical exertion involved in renovating the old townhouse helped relieve the constant adrenaline swirling around her body. She distracted herself with cleaning, painting, moving furniture, anything that would prevent her from thinking too deeply. It was with Harry's arms around her that she awoke this particular morning, but something was different. He was already awake, looking at her, his brows furrowed with concern. "What is it?" she mumbled, voice heavy with sleep. "I need to talk to you about something," he replied, tightening his grip on her. "Okay?" "I've been thinking about it for some time, but I've just received an owl." Harry waved his arm in a vague gesture towards the window. "And I have to make a decision." Hermione shifted apprehensively. "You're worrying me now." "It's about the trial," he said, and she froze. "I know, I'm sorry. I wish I didn't have to mention anything, but, well, I like to testify on behalf of Malfoy and his mother." Her heart beat erratically at the mention of his name. After Harry and Ron had been accepted onto the Auror training program, they had kept her up to date on the comings and goings of the Ministry. The Death Eater trials were running surprisingly smoothly, with the majority of sentences involving lengthy stays in Azkaban and generous repatriation donations. There was one trial set for weeks' time that was highly anticipated by the wizarding community: Lucius, Narcissa, and Draco Malfoy. Due to their high profile, many wanted them to suffer more harshly than any others. Trying to sound indifferent, she shrugged. "He might be a prat, but that doesn't mean he deserves Azkaban." Hermione could feel Harry visibly relax, and he smiled at her. "Thank you. I know this isn't easy for you. I just couldn't live with myself if I didn't tell them that he refused to identify us at the manor, that his mother pretended I was dead." "I know," she said softly. "How are you feeling about—" Harry hesitated. "Everything?" Hermione sighed. It was a difficult question. She wasn't entirely sure how she felt or what haunted her the most. The violence and torture she had been both witness to and personally experienced was certainly at the front of her mind. Equally, she had little respite from the painful emotions surrounding her obliviated parents and her relationship with Draco. The times when she ended up alone with her thoughts were the worst. It was this, in part, that had encouraged Hermione to accept her place in the newly created 8th year at Hogwarts. Professor McGonagall, now headmistress, had penned letters to every student in their year offering the chance to complete their reneweds. In the end, she said to him, "I'm coping." Harry nodded. If anyone understood, it was him. She knew he struggled with his own nightmares. Knew he found it difficult to relax and had grown used to the constant fear and anxiety. She wasn't sure whether he really wanted to be an Auror or if it was a coping mechanism of his own. The war had broken them all in different ways. On the day of the Malfoy trial, Hermione told herself that Draco wouldn't want her to attend, but truly she couldn't face it. She didn't know how she felt about him, and the likelihood of an emotional breakdown during such an important event was too much to risk. However, before Harry could leave Grimmauld Place, she raced down the stairs and caught the sleeve of his robes. "Are you okay?" he asked. Slightly out of breath, she replied, "No, but I couldn't let you leave without saying something." She handed him a piece of parchment. "It might help with the testimony." "Thank you," Harry said softly as he gripped her tightly to his chest. When he arrived back that evening, Hermione was close to tearing her hair out with anxiety. She all but leapt up on him when he walked through the door, tightly hanging his robes up. "What happened?" she questioned. No time for pleasantries. He shook his head. Let me get a drink first, at least. Conjuring 2 fire whiskies, she led him downstairs to the kitchen. Harry was silent for a long time, taking slow sips from his glass. It was hard. The Wisingamots' questioning was relentless, he said finally. Hermione, he didn't look good. She felt sick. Guilt furled its way around her stomach. Lucius has been sentenced to 20 years in Azkaban and a lifetime parole to follow. Narcissa is under house arrest for 7 years, and Draco... He looked at her, confirming she was ready. He's to serve a year's probation at Hogwarts, completing his final year. They'll make their final decision after that. I guess it's the best we could hope for, she whispered. Harry nodded. There was an uproar. I think it was our 2 testimonies that swayed the decision. Ron was there? Hermione asked, confused. Yet another pause. People were always careful around her these days. No, Harry said. He changed his mind. You know he doesn't forgive easily. I know. So, you and Malfoy at Hogwarts together this year? Chapter 8. Hermione walked hesitantly along the Hogwarts Express. Her hands trembled slightly with nerves as she approached the newly dedicated 8th-year carriage. Harry and Ron had just seen her and Ginny off at platform 9 3/4, and it had been an emotional separation. Hermione clung to their shoulders as they hugged, wishing they were coming with her. Heart pounding merciless in her chest, she slid the compartment door open, and every head whipped around to stare at the newcomer. In a moment of panic, she raised her wand and wiggled it in an awkward wave. A delicate snore drew her attention to the left, where 4 Slytherins were set. Her gaze caught on Draco, and she couldn't tear herself away from his storm-grey eyes. He looked tired, but healthier than she had seen him for a long time. The corner of his mouth crept up into a small smile, and she forgot how to breathe. Taking a step backwards, she fell into Neville, who had leapt up to greet her. She turned swiftly and let him lead her over to where he and Parvati were sitting. I'm so pleased you're here, Hermione, Neville grinned. We thought there would only be 2 Gryffindor representatives for a while. Hermione glanced around to take note of her peers. There were just 12 in total. Ernie Macmillan, Hannah Abbott, and Megan Jones from Hufflepuff, Michael Corner and Lisa Turnip from Ravenclaw, Draco, Blaise Zabini, Theodore Nott, and Pansy Parkinson from Slytherin, herself, Neville, and Parvati from Gryffindor. Not many of us chose to come back, Parvati commented quietly. Padma? Parvati shook her head. She couldn't face it, opted for distance learning through Outpost instead. The train hadn't been moving for long before Professor McGonagall swept into the carriage, clasping her hands together as she addressed them. I know it's unusual for you to see me here, but I wanted to take a moment before arrival to welcome every single one of you. I can appreciate that settling back into life at Hogwarts might be a challenge, given what you have all been through this year. The headmistress looked at each of them in turn, grief filling her eyes. We have decided, therefore, to unite you all into one house for your final year. McGonagall paused, taking in their shocked expression before continuing. This means you will be sharing a common room, as well as a table in the Great Hall. Of course, you might choose to sit with others for meals. That is your choice. Inter-house unity is something we would like to encourage between all students, and you 12 will be crucial to its success. When we arrive this evening, I recommend you head straight to your new common room and settle in. Get to know each other while I let the rest of the school know about the changes. We look forward to seeing you in the morning. As McGonagall left the carriage, Hermione, Neville, and Parvati exchanged looks. It was going to be an interesting year. The 8th-year common room was cozy and peaceful. The color palette included elements of all house colors, but they were toned down and interspersed with neutral hues. One side of the room was dedicated to studying and housed a long wooden table and chairs placed in front of an ornate bookshelf. The other side presented the students with numerous comfy sofas and armchairs laid out in a semicircle before a red brick fireplace. The center of the back wall stood a small staircase that led to bedrooms and bathrooms. An uncomfortable silence descended upon the group as no one was entirely certain about how to begin their journey towards inter-house unity. Right, said Blaise, stepping to the front of the crowd.
This is incredibly awkward, and the only thing I can think of to ease our collective pain is to play truth or dare, getting ragingly drunk and completely embarrass ourselves. Who's up for it?"
The silence extended, and Blaze widened his eyes bleedingly. "Fine," snapped Pansy, moving towards the sofa. "I'll play what you owe me." Encouraged by this, the rest of the students shuffled in the same direction. Hermione would rather have eaten flubberworms for the rest of her life than play truth or dare, particularly with Draco in the room, but she was loath to alienate herself from the group so early on. She did, however, sit purposefully as far away from the tall blonde as possible, which placed her next to a different Slytherin boy. Settling herself on a comfortable two-seater, Hermione said, "Hi, you're a theatre nut, right?" "Please, call me Theo, Hermione," he replied with a smile. She had never really noticed Theo before. She supposed Draco was the only person she had ever really found attractive. Theo was objectively very handsome. He had high cheekbones, long eyelashes, and a strong jawline, all of which was framed by smooth, dark brown hair, carefully shaped into a sweeping fringe across his forehead. Quickly realizing she was staring, Hermione blushed and turned back towards the group, who were devising ground rules. Theo leaned forward with her, and their shoulders brushed. She caught Draco staring, his eyes ablaze, and she decided not to pull her arm away.
"Okay, we have reached a consensus," Blaze announced. "We're going to play truth or truth."
Pansy cut him off with a smirk.
"Because, let's be honest, that's all we're really interested in."
"Thank you, Pansy," he conceded. "Also, the Gryffindors have requested we add Veritaserum to the fire whiskey battle. Apparently, we're going to have to work on our inter-house trust."
Hermione was now close to bolting. She did not want to answer questions under the duress of Veritaserum. Theo pushed gently against her arm and murmured,
"Are you okay?"
"Just not a fan of the truth potion aspect."
"It'll be all right," he promised. "We're all in it together."
Hermione gave him a small smile as Parvati passed her a glass. Blaze clapped.
"Right then, down this first drink and we'll get started."
The questions started off fairly neutral, but then, as the alcohol flowed, became increasingly risque. Hermione attempted to keep them all on track. "What made you decide to come back for 8th year?" However, this was met by resistance and groan.
"So," said Parvati, "who do you fancy most in this room?"
Working around the group anti-clockwise, the answer flowed easily. To her surprise, Theo said, blushing furiously,
"Hermione."
She suppressed a burn of jealousy each time someone said Draco, who answered without hesitation,
"Hermione."
Everyone eyed him curiously, but he only shrugged.
"Granger,"
Draco prompted with an amused look. She smiled brightly at him. In this exact moment, with her frustration so close to the surface, she could just about truthfully say it was not him.
"Theo."
"Bad luck, Draco mate."
Blaze laughed. Draco frowned imperceptibly, and his posture stiffened. It was Pansy's turn next.
"How many people have you kissed?"
Hermione's leg bounced anxiously as her response flowed in, ranging from none to a surprising 17. When everyone looked at her expectantly and she answered,
2,
she could have sworn she felt heat radiate from Draco. His eyes never left hers as he ground out,
"Who have you kissed?"
The tension between them was palpable, but thanks to the fire whiskey, most of the group remained oblivious, busy gossiping about their various kiss scenarios.
"Ron,"
Hermione muttered. Ernie began to ask another question when Draco interrupted him.
"Granger, you said you had kissed 2 people. Who was the other one?"
Anger bubbled up inside her. How dare he do this in front of everyone? She clenched her jaw tightly.
"Malfoy."
Laughter and surprised gasps filled the room. Game had been abruptly disbanded in favor of watching the scene unfold in front of them.
"What?"
cried Pansy, eyes round in shock. "When?" Although the Veritaserum meant Draco had no choice but to reply, he looked entirely too pleased with himself as he said,
"Many times, between, correct me if I'm wrong, Granger, 4th and 6th year."
Hermione's face burned with a mixture of rage and embarrassment.
"So many things are starting to make sense now,"
Pansy mused at the same time as Blaze commented,
"We all thought you were gay, mate."
Draco smirked.
"Clearly not."
She'd had enough. Hermione stood up and shot an apologetic glance around the group before storming towards her bedroom. To be continued. Thank you for listening to Going Down Fighting by Layla Moon, read by Ella Max Mabella. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, AO3, Instagram, or Tumblr.